Welcome back to Two Homers and a Realist. This is a continuation of our series of Get to Know the Homers and the Realist. This one will be all about Jay. We are here to interview Jay. Reminder that we are still in the middle of our studio construction.
Trying to finish it up.
We had some contractor issues. We had to fire a whole team. It was pretty rough, but we got a new team in here, and they're working very hard, redoing some things we didn't know that we had problems, but it's going to be a great expansion. We're real excited about it. But until that's done, we'll have some hammering and sawing and stuff going in the background. Let's turn our attention to Jay. So Jay?
Yes, sir.
I noticed that the name of the pod is Two Homers and a Realist, and we've heard from Two Homers and a Realist already in this series.
Who the hell are you?
Where'd you come from?
I'm just Jay.
Oh,
okay.
Just Jay.
You know, I came onto this project, this team, just a fraction too late, and from what I gather, there was just too many things already set in stone. It was just too much to change.
Too much branding at that point.
Too much branding.
A lot of contracts, a lot of
We
stuff.
literally have brands on our arm. So
It's true.
That's right. It hurt too, dude.
Yeah, you don't have one.
You guys probably wanted to see if I was even going to stick around before you changed
You've got a history.
all your logos and everything.
Yeah.
So, I'm just Jay.
Just Jay. So Jay, are you a homer? How do you identify? Are you a homer or a realist?
That's a really good question. Prior to the start of the pod a couple years ago, Lucas absolutely would have said I was a complete homer, like 100%.
He did.
You would have said that too.
Yes, that's true. And I'm kind of with you. I'm always optimistic when it comes to OU football. The rest of life, not so much. Football, yes, for some reason. But
That's all you've had. That's all you
something
have,
happened the last couple of years that has changed me. I was very down.
Been tainted.
Very down on the 21 team. Even though everything was within reach, we win that Bedlam game.
We were close.
We were close. We win that Bedlam game. We might make the playoffs. Who knows what Lincoln does? It's just, we've talked about it before on other pods. The craziest 9-0 ever, right? The most defeated 9-0 team ever for anybody. I can't even talk for other fan bases, but it just didn't feel right. The direction didn't feel right. I'm not as down on Brent's first year as maybe some are. I think, myself included, underestimated just the turnover of all the staff and all the changes of roster and all the changes of practice times and doing this and doing that and workouts and just how much that would affect the team. Now, does that ultimately change a 3rd and 1 or something on a Saturday? I don't know. But we did have 4 games within 3 points. It's a totally different offseason if we have a 10-win season.
So you play the role of both.
Yes, but generally I'm a homer.
But you tend towards optimism. You tend towards towards homerism.
Yes. I start off that way, and I have every right
optimistic
to fade
disposition.
as the season
You
goes.
realistically
But you hold-
adjust your expectations.
You reserve the right
Maybe
to go
I just
south.
hedge everything. I don't know.
Well, what is your OU origin story and your history?
So, I was born in Oklahoma, moved to Norman when I was 5, which was in 1985.
So you're 43.
Almost.
Almost. Birthday coming up.
And honestly, growing up as a kid, playing so much sports myself, and we followed OU, but my dad and I weren't huge fans. We were mostly Dallas Cowboy fans or just professional football fans. And with their dominance in the late 80s and early 90s, really OU football took a back seat to most of it. And then my own sports endeavors took most of my time through the rest of the 90s. So it really wasn't until like the second half of 99 where you could see the team was improving and there was something to look forward to, that we started watching more games. And then we were pumped and ready for the 2000 season, obviously not knowing what it was going to turn out to be. But so really most of all of my viewing technically is probably from 2000 to current. So even though Connor and I are different ages, our kind of time frame of viewing games is the same.
So
yeah,
you
interestingly.
started a lot with your dad as well. With you and your dad kind of came up that road together and
Correct.
started watching and enjoying the games.
Yeah, I don't have near the experience you guys have of attending games, but I think there's only 3 games since 2000 that I've partially missed, mostly.
Watching or being there.
Right. 05 Baylor overtime game with Bomar.
Rainy.
Girlfriend's birthday, had to go to dinner, had to miss that game. Sorry, guys.
Dinner. That's what we're calling it now.
Yeah. What else? I had another friend who is a listener on the pod. He got married on the OU TCU game, the Katy Perry game.
Sacrilegious.
And then one of my best friends' little brother got married in Florida during one of the K-State games, but it was on television even in Florida, so I got to see most of that.
So pretty dedicated, came up with similar time frame origin story, not just to Connor, but sort of in Lucas's coming back to the religion, very contemporary to him too. So a very similar history there, all of us with origins with our family and father in particular. It's interesting. So let's talk about, you mentioned what games you've attended and in general, and that you haven't attended maybe as many as us, but what is your current streak of home games, and what notable streaks have you had in your history?
I would say,
Your home game streak's at like 1.
Yeah, is it
home
one?
streak's not very good.
Yeah.
My son
Got to start fresh.
Son plays tackle football on Saturdays.
So you're being a good father. We get that. All right.
So the home streak's not doing well, but I would say there's a time frame from probably, besides the COVID season, obviously, that 2016 to current, where I hit the majority of home games.
Mm-hmm. What do you remember your first home game, away game?
I do, actually. My first home game was against Bowling Green.
Bowling Green.
Yep.
That was like the
It's like 04.
04 season,
Yeah.
something
Mhm.
like that.
Mhm.
And what was your second question? Sorry.
Your first away game.
My first away game was actually Tennessee.
Okay.
Wow, that's a good.
It's a
one.
good
was
first away
an
game.
Incredible, yes.
Well,
Wow.
for 3 quarters, it sucked.
Yeah, it's true, it
Yeah.
did.
Which
Well,
made the rest of it so good.
The whole time we were like, this is going to be the longest drive back ever.
So it was
14 hours.
It was 3 bad quarters and then basically 4 good quarters, right? Because it was triple overtime, wasn't it? Or double
I think
overtime?
it's double.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
overtime.
3 good quarters, call it.
Yep.
So yeah, that was about as good of a first road game as you could go to.
Have you been to OU, Texas?
Once,
So your first and only is...
05.
Oh,
Sorry.
dude.
Like Lucas,
You're doing it wrong.
I knew we were in trouble. Didn't matter. Free tickets.
So we're gonna have to change that this year.
Yeah, this year it all turns around.
We'll have to get 2 homers and a realist Airbnb, and
There you
it'll
go.
have to be a thing.
It's kind of funny. I enjoy both equally. Staying at home and watching it as much as I do attending.
Can you see
I think
things
it's a
you can't
totally
always
different
see?
perspective.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know why, but maybe because at home during a commercial, it sucks there's a commercial, but the time goes by. But when you're at the game and that guy comes out with his little screen and it says 3 minutes and it's just like 110 degrees, you're like, let's get this thing going.
Yeah.
What are we doing? Why is this guy out here? Why are we not playing?
Oh,
Especially the
so you
pay-per-view
got-
game. It's the stupidest to have TV timeouts for
A game you
Yes.
paid for.
That's where you get all the bleacher coaching advice and stuff like that.
I mean, you can never replace, the ambiance and the experience of the crowd and the fans, just how it feels to be at the game. But
I think that's my biggest thing with that game is one vivid memory, not to reminisce on my own experience, but one vivid experience was the Caleb Williams game a couple years ago. Steve's sitting like 7 rows down from me, and it's the Caleb Williams bomb to Marvin Mims and it's a touchdown. And I'll never forget us just meeting halfway in the aisle, running up, him running up and me running down, and losing our crap together.
Right.
So I agree. I think there's something to be said for the game on TV nowadays. It's so good. There's so many good vantage points. You get the vantage point.
It's
from your
nice
couch.
when we're at the game and you're at home and we can ask you what
And
happened.
ask questions.
Yeah.
Is he in?
I think
Also,
the first
like-
game I watched with Jay was an OU Texas game at our friend Josh's house, and we were jumping around, mainly Jay, doing the land shark thing. What was it called?
Oh yeah,
Land
the
shark,
shark.
yeah.
Land shark. He put his hand on his
sharks.
head.
Travis,
He's like running around the living
Travis
room.
Lewis. Travis Lewis.
Because
days.
funny.
I
You're
think
kind of a left shark
I
guy.
think Sanchez
to be
intercepted a
honest.
ball,
Left.
and he's running around doing this shark thing, and we're all high fiving.
That was 2014, right after we lost to TCU.
So,
Never
have
forget
you
that
been to a bowl game?
Nope.
Maybe that changes this year too.
Yep.
So, what's your favorite OU football season so far?
You know, I'd listened to the other pods, and I wanted to be different, but you also have to just answer how you feel. And I'm going to say the '08 season, just because pretty much what everyone else said. It was just a combination of my own personal age, right? It was just a fun time in life in general. The way the football team was designed and built, and just watching it grow into the juggernaut that it was just, the whole country was enthralled with what was going on offensively here at Oklahoma. And I think that's what it is. It's just the style of play, the involvement nationally, Heisman Trophy type quarterback.
Yeah, you had two storylines that year, right? OU offense and Tim Tebow's jump pass. That's about it.
Right?
And that unfortunately
Well,
clashed.
and Michael Crabtree
in the
getting us in
national-
the national championship game.
Yeah, that's true as well.
Now, I will say, I don't think going forward that the '08 season will be my favorite season, because now that my son is getting old enough and more engaged with the players and the game and understanding it, and he plays football himself, with the move to the SEC, etc., I think we're going to have a season soon where I
Special.
look back and it's just incredible, where we're all traveling to road games and our sons are all going with us, which they do most of the time now anyways, and we'll be able to look back and just be like, man, that 25 season where Jackson Arnold just torched Georgia in the hedges, we'll never forget that. Yeah. So I do think
Nice prediction. I like that.
my most memorable season is
Yet to come. I
Yeah.
like that. So, if you could schedule any home and home series with 3 teams, who would you choose?
I'll be a little redundant here as well. Penn State, just because the whiteout. I want to see.
You called that a bucket list for
yes,
a football
absolutely. It's just, I don't care if they're not any good. I just want to go to Penn State
fan. Might be preferable.
at night and just have the place just going insane. So I just want to see it. And I picked a couple different teams sort of for the same reason and a little bit just to be different. I want to go to Virginia Tech at night. I want to have the Enter the Sandman.
That's a really
entrance.
good. That's a really good out of the box pick.
Yep, that's a good.
It's a really good
team.
out of the box pick.
And a team, it's been, almost 20 years now, but I would like to go to Oregon.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I did too.
I considered putting Oregon
Yeah, I
on there
did
too.
too.
I've heard the
I like that.
acoustics of the stadium
Mhm.
is pretty unique.
Eugene would be fun to go to.
Never
Yeah.
been to the state in general.
Yeah,
I just hate
Um,
them so much.
but that makes it good.
I do
It does.
dislike them, right? And they are on the up and up. I do think.
How much do we dislike them if we don't get screwed on the?
Oh, it isn't an issue.
It's
What
not
was the
even
guy's
close.
name? Reese.
Yeah,
Gordy?
Gordon Reese.
Gordon Reese. Yeah.
If they get that call correct, Alan Patrick has the ball in his hand. We down it out twice. The game's over. Do we hate Oregon
No, not at
because
all.
we beat him at home?
Not at all.
And then we beat them in the Holiday Bowl.
And we beat him in the Holiday Bowl.
Yeah,
we
no.
beat him there. And then we beat them at the Alamo Bowl with Bob
Yeah, no.
2 years ago, or year before last.
It's not an issue.
Do we hate Oregon then?
Not at all. It's not an issue. It's funny.
It's crazy
Not unless
how
you
one
hate
horrific
teams
call
that have jerseys. And
changes it.
Well, just a few losses can make it all. Like, so Miami is hated by OU fans, and I don't think Miami holds the same hatred for OU. I think that Florida State hates OU in a way OU doesn't hate Florida State, because we've almost always come out on top in those matchups up to last year's
Especially
as an
in
exception.
important ones.
In the important ones, for sure. So it is funny how it turns on that. Like, we hate Boise State for one game, which I will hats off. That is one of the greatest college football games ever, because we lose and in how it plays out. They don't hate us. They probably just love the history, and if we win that game the way we should have, they're just
a non-factor.
a non-factor.
They're UConn
They're UConn
or
yeah.
Iowa.
Yeah.
I mean,
agreed.
So, what's your position on the controversial topic of likely winning an easy bowl game versus likely losing in the playoffs? Which do you choose ex ante if you have a chance?
I go back and forth on this. This is a difficult question for me. Ultimately, I pick that you always want to be there. I think you always want to have a chance, no matter how small it is, to continue to move forward towards a national championship. I think you want all the extra talk for the weeks leading up to it, to have your brand, to have your coach interviews, to have your this, to have your that, for all the high school recruits around the country. But at the same time, getting your butt handed to you by LSU does no good. All the branding leading up to it, all the extra eyeballs on your program is all for nothing when you just get mud stomped.
It's maybe even for a negative,
Right.
in some cases.
does it help that the recruiting, the early signing date now is going to be before the bowl games?
Probably.
Because you're going to get, instead of the February 1st Wednesday, if you get your butt handed to you in a game like that, you may lose a couple recruits come February, but because you got
already
smashed.
But you've already
But
gotten
now
locked
with the
in.
December date, you've
Right.
already signed that class,
Yeah, there's probably
So-
some coaches that have thought that way.
so that might be helpful.
But I think that can still even linger to the next class.
Yeah.
Right? Because those kids, remember, they're busy with their own seasons too.
Yeah,
So the last time you played someone big time, you just got stomped. It's not good. But I also don't think there's much to gain from beating just an average team in a bowl game. It doesn't hurt you. I don't think it hurts your off season whatsoever. I don't know that it helps your off season. But
you don't think stomping Auburn that year had really good momentum to go into the next season?
I do, but that's a good team, and it was an SEC team, so there was a good matchup in terms of how sexy it was. There was the Bob Stoops angle where he was always talking about the SEC and it's not that big of a deal and yada yada yada. So if you take whatever Auburn's equivalent is, I don't know if it's Wisconsin or something. I don't know. I don't know if beating Wisconsin's that big of a deal
Michigan State
on a
maybe.
regular game. I don't know. I think all I know about it is if you get there, don't get stomped. That's it. That's it.
You can lose,
Competitive.
Yeah.
but don't get stuck.
Lose,
Be
be
competitive. Be competitive.
Because even really against Kyler against Alabama, most people just remember that game was pretty much over.
Yeah, out
Right.
of the first quarter,
And it was.
28-0.
Yeah.
But when we finally, took our head out of the sand, they couldn't keep up with us. If we just didn't have
we ran out of
just
time.
that
Three
poor
bad
of a-
drives. 3 bad drives.
that poor of a first quarter,
Yeah.
it could have been a game.
We ran out of time in that game.
For sure. So let's look back at some games from your perspective and tell me notably, or what games stand out notably as the best and the worst, and think about the venue as well, the atmosphere, the stadiums, the fan experience.
Gosh, best game. That Tennessee game, just like everyone's saying, it's just hard to beat. It was phenomenal, just from the town to the people to the tailgating to the location of the stadium there on the river.
It had all of it.
The game, it was the whole thing was just
That-
it was phenomenal.
I forgot to mention when I was talking about on mine that Friday night, we went down to the river to some bar, and it was
All of you.
100% OU fans. But we parked like a half a mile away, and as we walked down, there were like older couples walking, and every one of them, hey, welcome. We all had OU, of course, on. Welcome to Knoxville. Hope you have a good time, but not too good of a time. Literally, we passed 5 or 6 people on the way to this bar, and they could not have been nicer with the welcome to Knoxville stuff. And then that whole Friday night, we were on this overlooking the river bar, and it was all, 500 OU fans or whatever it was. It was an indoor outdoor. They had like this big huge patio, like multi-tiered patio set
Like a
up.
dock.
Yeah, like almost like a dock type thing. And man, that was a great night. And that was the night before the game.
Well, and the people listening to this pod, I don't want you to think it's groupthink. It's funny. Like, my wife and I have talked about it multiple times. That's one of the first. I think that may be the first away game she and I went to together, and she still chalks that up as her number one. I don't even think it's her number one away game. I think it's her number one game experience that she's ever been to, that she says that she looks back on. So definitely a special
Yeah,
place,
I could
special
almost
environment.
agree with her on that because it was phenomenal.
Yep.
It really was. And the tailgating the day before, you couldn't walk 5 feet before somebody made you try their barbecue, try their this, gives you a drink. And it was just tent after tent after tent for hours and hours and hours.
I look forward. It's amazing, and it's a tribute to them, just like with some other schools that we've talked about and different experiences I had at Alabama, you guys had at Ohio State. I look forward to a time when that Southern hospitality is no longer extended to the team that is now their worst nightmare. And I hope that's who we become, so that we're resented so much that we are not welcomed the same way. I do hope, and maybe they will be still as hospitable, but it's different when you're not in the conference, especially in that game,
Well,
where
it's a
they didn't
one-off,
view you as a dominant presence that's going to be
Well,
a
and
real
they
threat.
had a good experience the year before.
In Norman, when we beat them,
Right.
but they had a good experience, which I'm glad to hear. I hope it does continue, but it does change the complexion when you're in the conference and you're winning, and I hope we get a mixture of that, because I hope we're winning.
Absolutely.
Other places, other games.
Ohio State was fantastic. It's just the aura, the lure of being in the horseshoe. It was interesting. The fans all told us how bad their fans are, and then we really never ran into any bad fans. So that was kind of interesting that literally every single Ohio State fan warned us about their fans. So it was very
You guys must have
strange.
been on this walk along Courtesy Lane or something like that.
We went to several.
'Cause your
several
experience
tents
was
of
not
food.
anything
We were
like
just-
wasn't
that.
the same.
We
were
went to
just
different
eating
areas. We didn't
food
go. Game day was in town, and they were further away than we wanted to walk down to go to. So we just stayed in the normal tailgating area in a couple of different spots, and we played cornhole with a couple different ones.
I don't remember exactly
ate
where I was
free
at a lot of
food
the
and
time, but
Yeah, free food and drink multiple
Now after the
places.
game, they all disappeared.
Yeah, do you remember the guy at the hotel? He owned like a bar, and I guess it was kind of a shady bar, or like maybe like a little,
imagine that.
little rough around the edges kind of bar. And he was at the hotel with a bunch of former players and stuff, and they were all getting together, and they were super kind and nice. And he was like, "Hey, come by our bar tonight for Friday night and whatnot." He's like, "But Saturday, if y'all win," he said,
Don't go out.
"Go home.
Yep.
Go to your hotel. Don't go out. Don't do." He was
And we
very
did.
adamant about don't going around Columbus celebrating.
And
the
you
victory.
didn't, right?
No, we did
We
not.
stopped at a White Castle on the way back to
Oh,
the
I
hotel.
remember
And
the
the
White Castle
Buckeye-
story.
The guy,
guy in the stands
Yeah.
that has all the
the bald
Regalia.
guy that
Yeah.
has
yeah
he was
paint,
there,
He was there.
and then the African American guy with the red hair and the cowboy hat or whatever he wears.
Mhm.
They were both there together at the White Castle and wouldn't even look us in the eye after the game.
It was funny. But that was a good experience. I think Lucas touched on the UCLA trip was great. Regardless, I could care less how good or bad their team is. The stadium was beautiful.
we went to the Rose Bowl.
Yeah,
The sunset, like everyone says,
Beautiful.
once halftime or so hits, that third quarter
yeah.
sunset comes, and we all got this close. Did anyone mention this?
No.
This close to
Going on
getting
the field.
on the field
Yeah, that's
after
right.
that game, And then somehow, because of where we were, we got ushered down
The tunnel.
player-
the tunnel
player
where
tunnel.
the player parent tunnel is. And we were just waiting for all the players to come out.
And we saw a lot of them.
We did. I took a picture with maybe the best 5-star player in OU history. You guys know who that is?
Yeah, Buki.
Buki.
I still got it on my phone.
And I remember Spencer Rattler being exceptionally despondent.
He was.
that
he was
somebody said, "I thought you were
exceptionally-
going to get in." He goes,
pissy.
"Yeah, I did too."
Yeah.
He was
I think you got
not
one
happy.
with Ramondre too, didn't
Max
No,
got a
I
high
got
five
one
from
with
Lincoln.
Yep.
Yep.
Charleston Rambo,
Yep. I think that's it.
Bookie. I think those are only two I can
I
remember.
think that's it.
Now
I
Max
got both of
went.
them on my. You got
Lincoln,
Lincoln's
right?
high five.
Yeah.
Yep. Lincoln
Burn
didn't high
that
five
picture
anyone
now.
else.
So, were you at the '08 Texas Tech game?
The jump around.
No.
game? You'd remember if you were.
No.
Yeah.
What any?
been a
Any,
lot of
any
diff-
home game.
any home
home
game
games
of-
that you want to mention?
Yeah.
I really don't have any that stick out. I don't know if it's just because we've been so dominant at home.
Were you at the 2016 Ohio State game?
Yes.
That's a big game. What
that's a
about
big game, it's
2012?
rough.
2012 Notre Dame.
I was at 2012 Notre Dame with my mom.
Tough game, but fun game.
Wait, was that 2012 or 2011? And 2012 was
2012, 2013.
in. Okay,
We went there
2013
in
was up there.
2013.
Okay,
Yep.
That game was cold.
It was.
it was cold.
My mom
In
and I
many
did
ways.
not dress weather appropriate. I was not sure we were even going to make it into the stadium.
Your mom from the islands was
Because
not dressed
she-
appropriately.
Was
Imagine that.
hopping from tent to tent, and the frat boys were
Partaking.
just giving her shots, and we couldn't even walk. I say we. She could not even walk down Lindsay Street to get to the southwest side of the stadium.
All right, we might need to bring your mom to the game or two.
Yeah,
I
we're
think
gonna
she-
need.
We
We
did
still
just
laugh
fine.
to this day about it. Anytime I see a funny video of someone that just is so inebriated they can't walk on TikTok or something, I send it to her and say Notre Dame.
So there you go. That's a good memorable. That's a good.
It is.
That's
It
a
is
good
good.
game.
And she
memory.
sobered up quick because she was so cold. You know, she's a Caribbean islander, and it was just way too cold for her. So she snapped out of it pretty quick.
Well, I think similar to your best season is yet to come. Maybe your best games are yet to come
Let's
as
hope so.
well. I
Yep.
hope so.
Yeah, I mean, for me, honestly, just the dominance at home, there hasn't. I feel like there haven't been that many great home games.
No,
I
especially
would
in
agree
this
with you.
latter half of this century, whatever, where
TCU was really
Yeah,
good.
it was
Stephen Parker
TCU,
knocked
Stephen
the ball.
Parker
Yeah,
game.
that was good.
Well, we've had a number of
2015.
close ones that shouldn't have been, and then we haven't had a very dominant league, and so a lot of those were games where we win a nail biter against Iowa State or Oklahoma State when we really should have dominated
Right.
that game. And then the other games we
2016
do
OSU
dominate.
was pretty fun. Where P. Ryan takes the knee at the three.
That was really
That was a
good.
fun
There's
game.
a lot of those games that actually are pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I was in the weather for the Pirine game.
The Kansas game.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that was an interesting game.
It is tough to pick out a home game.
Yeah.
It's you're
There's
very
so many that run
you're
together.
very quick to
Right.
default to something that you're experiencing newly as in an away game.
And you get used to,
So-
you're in the same seats, and
Yeah.
it's the seat, it all kind of runs together, honestly. While
Sadly,
with
it
an away
does.
game, it's
Well,
very
like
memorable.
several of those
I mean-
Big 12 title games, I'm sorry, Big 12 championship games against Oklahoma State, where it's, back before, in that era we didn't have a championship, and we win one at home, and then we win
2015 on the
just in
road.
regulation, and then we win one in overtime, or am I remembering that wrong?
No, that it wasn't for the Big. Well, I guess it would have been rights to the Big 12 title in 20. It would have been 2012 when
Uh-huh.
we came back against Oklahoma State, went to overtime, and Brendan Clay runs it in on the.
I think
first or
that's the
second
title.
play.
There wasn't a Nebraska's
Yeah, so
gone
it
at that
was-
time,
yeah,
so
we-
that was
we
the title.
Won the
yeah,
title
and then
off of that.
P. Ryan
but
taking the knee.
There's
so
a
there are a
couple
lot
of
of
those
good
games.
ones.
I mean, yeah, I mean.
They run together.
Mhm.
They definitely run together. Well,
What about bad experiences?
Yeah, I honestly can't say I've had any.
Did you go to the K-State missed extra point, missed field goal game?
I do. I actually think I was sitting in the end zone.
2014.
Is that when it was? Was that
Um,
Honeycutt?
Yep.
Yeah, money
It
cut.
was.
Missed the extra point, missed a
went downhill
game-winning
after
field
that.
goal. That's one of my worst. TCU in 05 is up there.
Yeah, I didn't go to many
Baylor in
games
14
early
was really bad.
2000s.
Baylor in 14 was really bad.
That was really, really bad. I would say Baylor in 14 is worse than TCU.
Julian Wilson just
Because
I was
TCU in
not-
retrospect
I was
is not
there
that
for
bad.
But yeah, the booing, that game is infamous for its own
Yeah.
reasons. No, not really. Not that many bad experiences.
Did you go to Baylor with us in 20?
Yeah.
21?
Yeah, he was
Yep.
there.
Yep.
Yep.
That one sucked.
Yeah, that sucked.
That did suck.
Could have
I-
been really bad at Kansas or Kansas State that
Yeah.
Could
season.
have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, we avoided
Kansas-
a couple. We missed a couple. We dodged a couple bullets, but we caught one in Baylor.
The Kansas game
That
will just
that
be
game did
so
suck.
memorable
That game
just
sucked.
because it was empty. You could sit wherever you wanted to. We're playing terrible. We start seeing on Twitter
Free admission.
free admittance, right?
For all students.
For-
The student
everybody.
radio was
For
like, get
everybody.
down to the stadium, it's free.
So all of a sudden they're like, man, we might actually beat OU, and it's just the place gets crowded out of nowhere. You've got Caleb stealing the ball.
Which you
It
shouldn't have
just-
to do. And a million
whole
bad
thing
things.
is-
Now, I will say the fans, which is in stark contrast to every other time I've been to Kansas, the fans were actually really fun that we
day?
were around
Yes.
that day.
That day, yes.
Students and young people that usually we run into a lot of ugliness, to tell you the
Like
truth,
we
in
did that one
Kansas.
time.
Like we almost got into a fight that one time. And other times I've been there and had a lot of heckling and different stuff. That group of guys
They were cool.
very cool and knowledgeable as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that was unique, and the only good part of that otherwise ugly game that
I
we
loved-
that and winning.
I loved the Kansas State Stadium.
Yeah.
Just the setup. I don't know if it's just a smaller crowd, so everything flowed better.
It's intense.
But it was a combination of just the way the outer
Yeah.
That was a fun
walkways
pregame too,
designed
though. We walked around that
for
whole.
concessions
Yeah.
and stuff.
That
it's
whole
just
place that-
it's
awesome.
been a lot of fun as a group, the four of us,
Yeah.
going to these road games together
Yeah.
and then doing pods after and all that stuff. But getting to experience the games as a
As a
team,
group,
essentially,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's the only time we all sit together.
Yeah, that's true.
We text like crazy, but it's the only time we're all there together in the full power of our analysis.
Because you're relying on me sitting in the end zone.
which is
to
significant.
give
Yeah, and-
you-
and sometimes
to let
we-
you know what's going on at the home
Sometimes we
games.
wonder if you're looking the wrong way. It's like, no, you're looking at the water tower. Turn around.
I have noticed you're much smarter when we don't sit in the end zone. You say a lot. You have a lot better analytical skills.
Well, let's go back to Bedlam. We touched on some of the Bedlam games. What is your view on the future of Bedlam and what's optimal? Would you like to see OU play them always, occasionally, or never?
I'll go occasionally. I think it mostly depends on what the 12-team playoff looks like and what are other equal teams scheduling every year. If you can get away with maybe losing to an Oak State occasionally and losing to Michigan and still getting into the playoffs or something, then I don't have that big of a deal. But if you still can't afford those losses and make the 12-team playoff, there's literally no reason to play them because you
Or if they're not
gain-
good enough to get credit for it, too.
Right, you gain nothing, honestly, from
Well,
playing them.
what if they're a
But
top
for
two
them,
team
it's
in the conference?
everything.
What if they're perennial Big 12 title
I
contenders?
still don't know if you gain anything for that.
I don't think
gain
the
a
Big
little
12
bit by,
is gonna be
by
a perennial
if they're still
conference.
considered a Power 5 when after everything shakes out, the Big 12 still a Power 5 conference, let's say, and OSU year in and year out is first or second, every now and then dip into third, but they're title contenders for that conference. Do you stand to gain credit as an out of conference schedule by playing them to boost your resume?
You
Not,
would.
not to end. Yeah, I think you have to give OSU 10 years to establish themselves as such.
Yeah, I would say there's two giant ifs in your hypothetical
Yeah.
doing a lot of work.
Well,
and
they've been.
I just
But
don't
you-
buy.
you
I don't
can't-
think
they're a top
either are
Problem
going to
is you
happen.
can't
They've been a top four Big
schedule it
12
that
team.
way, right? You don't know what they're going to be.
Right.
when
Yeah,
you schedule.
yeah, that's
Right.
the major
So
problem.
that's the problem.
Yep.
Yeah,
and,
if-
and I
if-
would say you have more reason to doubt than you have reason to believe.
That's why you schedule the people like Michigan and Georgia and Clemson, because you have more times than not a better idea of what they're going to be at that time than what they're not going to
Well,
be.
Yeah.
and you always get credit for
Yeah, but-
scheduling then.
But was Nebraska that way this year?
But you
Well,
always get
you
credit
still
for
get
it. You
credit
still
for
get
it,
credit
yeah.
for Nebraska.
Do you?
That it's like
definitely
the
think so.
absolute
They went 1 and
extreme,
11 or
but
whatever
that's the
this-
extreme end of that, and you still got at least publicity for it. No one cares if you schedule Boise State unless you almost get beat.
I mean, we
or
played
get
Miami
beat.
back to back when they were down. We played Florida State back to back
But
when they
they're
were
big
down.
names. They're big names.
Yeah.
That's ideal, actually. You get all the credit of the name, and you don't actually have the challenge
Yeah,
of the
I
tough
think that's
team.
the deal is what nationally do people think of the game, right? OU, OSU, not that, nationally, I just don't think it's that big.
Nationally, they recognize it for what it is, which is the most lopsided
Yeah.
Nationally, they
matchup
recognize
in the history of college
the
football.
scoring. I've heard national people. I listen to like Barstool podcast, part of my take, and they're like, we love watching Bedlam because even if it doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, those two teams score a ton of points and it's like a shootout over the years, and that's been the case for half of a decade off and on.
We've been exciting offenses for half a decade
Yeah.
more, and that's something for that, but that's a unique situation. It has nothing to do with Bedlam. I would say that we're closer to the Egg Bowl than we are the Iron Bowl, and the Iron Bowl is not that significant. We're definitely not the Game or OU Texas or even UCLA
They've
USC.
had game days. They've had 3 or 4 game days in Stillwater in the last 2 decades.
All with us.
I mean,
Yeah.
All with us. Maybe one for Texas.
No, I'm talking in Stillwater.
They're just not
No,
that
I
important.
thought you just meant in general game
No, I'm
days.
just talking
for Bedlam.
Bedlam games where game day has been there in Stillwater, particularly. They really haven't.
I
come
don't
here.
think it's a big
I bet
national
they've done it 3 or 4
draw.
times in.
I don't think
in
it
20
matters.
years. That seems like quite a bit.
It is. I just don't. You just
I think
don't
they keep
know
it in
what
their
the next
back,
20
I think they
years
keep it in their
for
back
them is going to
pocket.
be to have them scheduled.
And even in those, that was more a lot for us to lose, little for us to win, a lot for them to win, little for them to lose. So I don't know.
But no, I'm down.
But we all
for,
agree.
I'm down for it.
We all agree on this.
If it's one of your big out of conference games every 5 years, I'm cool with that.
What loss or what losses would you consider, and which loss would you select to change in the history of your fandom?
I'll run over a couple. I'll say, and maybe for a different reason, I'll say 08 to the Gators. Because I think it changed the trajectory of our program for a while. If we win that game, I don't think we have that lull that we went through in the early 2010s.
Yeah.
I feel like recruiting, all of it, maybe Bob's like reinvigoration for continuing it or making it better, or coaches that wanted to come here or whatever, but that third loss in a championship game in a row, I think just nationally just put the Oklahoma can't get over the top, we can't do it,
The opposite of
we
big
just,
game, Bob.
we just can't win it.
We
yeah,
did have
and
the
I
most
think
prolific
it took us,
passer in OU history after that,
I think it
Landry Jones.
yeah,
but it
and not a
wasn't-
lot to show for it.
it just
Yeah, we
I
gotta,
do.
we
I
gotta
think
win
it would
against
have
UConn to
changed.
show for it.
Yeah.
Now, maybe it wouldn't have been good to
Stanford.
have not changed the trajectory. Maybe we needed to go through that so that things like Lincoln taking over did happen, and then so that like something like Venables could take over. Who knows?
Maybe.
But I kind of wanted to say like 04 USC game just because that game was trash. That game is not 55-19 if you play it 10 times. It's just not. Will they win 6? Sure. But it just was not that lopsided. It just was not that uneven of teams. I would say 03 kind of for the same reason. I think if you win 03 or 04, then you're following up 08 with an 09 and an 010 appearance in titles, because I think the momentum would have been Bama-esque under Saban, or what George is kind of doing right now. If you win 2000 and 2003 and then lose 4 and then you back in 8 and can win that one, you're just rolling. I mean, absolutely rolling. So, but I'll go with 08 just because I think we needed it. I think it was a very tough loss.
And we're good enough to say
good enough
we
team
deserved
to win
it.
that game.
Not like a 19. Changing a 19 would be
Right.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Those two 08 teams play again, and it's
Oh,
51-49. Someone will have to win an extra game, but
Oh,
I don't know.
I
DeMarco
actually
Murray, we
think our
win-
edge is bigger than that,
we win
especially if
6
we
out
have
of 10,
DeMarco.
maybe 7.
I totally agree. So, this isn't a question we didn't get a chance to ask each other. I just thought of it, but it's very apropos for you because this is really your bailiwick. So, what is your favorite and least favorite aspects of recruiting?
Man, right now it's NIL. I just
Favorite or least favorite?
least. It's just I'm not necessarily a fan of regulation per se, but when it hurts my team, I am. So, I just think Lucas mentioned it as maybe a fear going forward. I don't know that we're gonna have that collective in place. There's just the income disparity for our state just isn't there to get some of the players I think you need to get, or I don't know if you need to get them, but it's better to get them than not get them.
Uh-huh.
And like Lucas said, we're going to have to build more and rely on development and our own evaluations a little bit more than other teams. And for me, as a football fan, that just sucks because I wish we could just throw some money at players.
What's your favorite?
Gosh, my favorite part of recruiting is
Used to be signing day, maybe. You really loved when it was one signing day in February. You guys used to get together for that.
it was fun to have a day where you saw your class come together. Everything, social media kind of ruined that with the announcements, and there's so many insiders and crystal balls, and you kind of know who you're going to have, and so it's not that big of a deal for signing day anymore. But mostly I think recruiting, I like that you've got a whole fresh new team. I mean, there's always
Hope.
the future, yeah, and it can be good or bad, right? Because your class can be, wow, we missed on some players that's going to hurt us in a couple of years, or you can land somebody, 2 or 3 guys that are like, they can change the trajectory moving forward. So I think the
I was gonna
combination
say,
of hope
as your friend
and despair.
as your longtime friend, I would say that your favorite part of it is that it's year round, and it gives you something to focus on.
That's true. I do like
outside
that.
of the real world, politics, whatever.
Yeah.
It gives you something year round to look forward to following.
I have
Because
had
you
to
do follow
adjust.
year-round.
I have had to adjust to Venable's style, where if you're going to commit, you commit. You don't take other visits. You don't do anything, and that makes it less sexy for OU fans to follow recruiting, because
It's late.
all these other schools are just constantly announcing this new guy and this new guy and that new guy. Now, he might eventually change, right? But for right now, you have that instant gratification of, we got this guy. And we don't have that. So it's new, but
What is your biggest concern for OU now?
boy, I could take this several ways. This next season is more important than we probably even know on how we develop, how our coaches grow, how our players grow. You mess this up this next season, and you don't get some of those recruits to come in that we think we're in on or are in on and are maybe coming to us, it can get ugly quick. I think you can fall to the bottom of the SEC in a snap of the fingers. I really do. And I'm not as optimistic per se as Lucas, where you can just go get a bunch of portal guys and all of a sudden you're kind of back on top. I don't know if that's going to work in the SEC, because as OU and Texas come over, I think that'll even cause more players to go into the SEC to other teams. So I think the bottom of the SEC is going to get even better the more good teams that you bring in. So I just think this next year's crucial. I will be ready to jump off a bridge if we have a 7-win season next year.
It could literally set you back 3 years worth of.
On
More.
paper,
I
on,
mean,
on
I really
paper, I'm really worried if we have a 7 game. only a 7-win season.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
It's,
Well,
it's,
Brent
it's
gets that
bad.
$25,000 bonus if he gets 7 wins.
That's
right?
true. So
That's
he'll
gotta
be
out of the
okay.
contract at this point.
All right. So how optimistic are you for OU's future?
I'll say I do think Brent is the guy and the staff that he's surrounded him. We can go back and forth on Levy. I don't say that offensive coordinators are a dime a dozen, but there's going to be plenty of people that want that job that are already very successful, qualified with a track record. So I'm not worried if something happened with Levy. Jackson Arnold worries me a little bit if something happens with Levy. But as far as Brent and his staff, he will build this defense. I literally have no question whatsoever that the defense will get righted. There's just no logical explanation for it not to. We have too many recruits that everybody else wanted, particularly this last season where we're more than ever battling and winning legit recruitments against Bama's, Clemson's, Georgia's, people like that. Higher 4 stars than just maybe the 300 ranked guy. We're getting the 90th ranked guy, right? So I do think that matters long term on an entire roster. And the staff he has around him, the defense will get fixed. I don't know if there's enough time. I was on the proponent where I was okay with the 25 being SEC season number 1. Honestly, if we had had 2 more years to instill in our team what it's going to take, recruit the players it's going to take, get the strength and conditioning to what it's going to take, to then bust into the 25 season, I'd felt much better. But we'll see how the team is on the field this year, and if they're bigger, stronger, faster, and they seem to have the system down a whole lot more, and they're moving people off the ball, and the D-line is just creating havoc, I'll feel a whole lot better for 24. But in general, I'm in the same 7, 7.5, 8 range.
Okay. I was going to ask, how does that translate to a
Yeah.
scale of 1 to 10? So that's good. So compare that position to where you were back in the start of the Lincoln Riley era through maybe the 17 season. How does it compare?
Well, I think during the 17 season, as it went on, you had to be over the moon with Lincoln Riley's performance. And then as each year went by and you kind of, especially now, you go back and look at the stats, we progressively got worse year after year after year under Lincoln Riley.
In both facets.
And we could all see it defensively, and we knew there needed to be a change, and we had hoped, honestly, I had hoped at the time Oklahoma itself could get a bigger name than Grinch. And I guess I really didn't.
Pete Golding.
I guess I didn't really pay attention to how much someone really needs to know the head coach to come take that job. Maybe I felt like it was more like, well, this is just the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. Okay, you don't know
get the
Lincoln,
job.
and Lincoln's new, big deal.
Right.
I felt like we could have got a much bigger name, more experienced person to come in. But I was willing to give Grinch his chance, and same type of deal. It just did not get any better. From season 1 to season 2, it started to look promising, and but then it was a step back from after that.
So would you say that optimism was similar, this kind of on the scale of the
I think the
1 to
optimism
10?
was more in that like 2017 season
Uh-huh.
with Lincoln.
It built.
But I think in sustainability, I'm more optimistic that Brent can maintain and knows what it looks like. I know does a lot of coach speak, and when he got hired on, he said a lot of things like, I know what it takes to build a team to win a national title. I know what it takes to beat the SEC teams in the playoffs in the title game. I know what my team needs to, quote, look like, right? And when he says that, he's talking physically. Like, he literally is talking what they need to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And our teams haven't looked like that, or had enough guys look like that.
Yeah.
And I know several other players that are local personalities and stuff have mentioned it before, where we show up to the 2018 game against Bama and just them walking across the field, just like, we do not have guys like this. Like, we just don't. Even though we're Oklahoma and we're in the playoffs and we're a perennial top 5 team, our guys don't look like that. I do think Brent knows what our players need to look like, and I think they can coach them up to where they need to play like.
I like the way you frame it.
Much more than Lincoln.
Yeah, and I think it's clear, at least in hindsight, that we built up optimism really quickly, and that was a flash in the pan fool's gold. Whereas now, if we have a tremendous season next year, let's just say we do have the tremendous seasons where we win the Big 12 title and I'm in the playoffs and look good. You don't win, well, we look good.
It's like foundational.
It looks foundational.
Yeah.
It looks like something to build on, where we know we've been poor, and now we've with Lincoln, it's like you didn't have a chance to be bad to prove yourself. He's never been tested until the latter half of his OU tenure, and he didn't pass the test. And so with Brent, I think there's reason to be more optimistic. It's a more substantial optimism. Last question, will we win a national championship within the next decade?
Yeah, I'll say yeah. Maybe it's just a numbers thing. It's just been too long. And we're a team that doesn't go this long without winning one.
And you think we're on the trajectory to compete?
Yeah,
All right.
I do. And I think, too, your road might be tougher, but I think, maybe not for us because we're pretty accustomed to winning our league and getting in the playoffs, but for teams in general, you really do have a better shot at winning a national title with 12 teams.
No, yeah.
You've got your foot in the door. And
Yeah.
it just takes a couple of games where you're playing just right, and you can win a national title. But I really do. I feel like the defense, it's proven what he did at Clemson. It progressively got better into where it was the top defense in the country. And once they got a gunslinger, that was the quality of like, oh, pretty boy, what's the blonde?
Trevor Lawrence.
Trevor Lawrence, you know, that was the Deshaun Watson and the Trevor Lawrence, and there you go. You got your national title. And I do think we still have the cachet to get those types of players, a la Jackson Arnold or the next guy in line. I think Oklahoma's always going to get a quarterback like that, and you have to have one of those, and you have to have a defense that can shut people down.
Well, Jay, I appreciate your realistic optimism,
Yeah.
and it was good to get a chance for the audience to get to know you better.
Absolutely.
Boomer?
Sooner.